From now on, I will speak in English, change a bit, so if you need your translators. I will also talk of something that occurred to me during all these amazing speeches. That is something we also been touching, but is artistic intelligence versus artificial intelligence. So it's something I would like to also touch. This communication is situated within a research creation perspective in the intersection of performance studies, contemporary ecological theories, hydrofeminist, and thought, the post-humanistic approaches. It examines the relationships between writing and staging through the notions of connections, transformations, and transmission, proposing a critical shift away from models based on linearity, causality, and hierarchic distinctions between text and stage. Rather than treating writing as a preparatory or representing layer that precedes performance and staging as its execution, it proposes understanding both the co-emergent practices embedded in the shared ecological and material conditions. Performative practice are thus understood as relational, processual, and co-constitutive processes embedded within an unstable environment where bodily, material, and ecological dimensions intertwine. This shift also implies a methodological reposition. Writing is not external to performance, but already part of its unfolding, and staging is not the realization of a score, but a field of negotiation between heterogeneous agencies, human and non-human, linguistic and material, visible and atmospheric. Connections refer to situated and embodied relations between body, memory, and environment, in which writing is no longer conceived as an autonomous form or a closed representational system, but rather an emergent practice within a field of sensitive material and effective interactions. The body constitutes a site of inscription and perception, participating in distributed regimes of meaning-making and interaction with both human and non-human agents. Transformations refer to the performative operations through which gestures, voices, and sonic spatial materials reconfigure forms of representation. The stage is therefore defined as a space of post-humanist co-agency, where bodies and environments contribute both to the production and the stabilization of the sensitive. Transmission is conceived as an ecological and relational process grounded in co-presence, listening, reciprocity, engaging forms of living and distributed memory that move beyond preservation towards circulation and reconfiguration of meaning. This implies that memory is not located in fixed archives, but is continuously reactivated through encounters between bodies, materials, and environments. Thus, writing and staging appear as situated performative practices that generate sensitive ecologies of memory and renewed models of relation between body, knowledge, and environment. In this sense, performance is not an object, but an ongoing ecological condition of relation. In this context, representation must be rethought. it is retained, it can no longer be understood as reproduction or absence made present, but must be expanded to include reenactment as a situated embodied reactivation of meaning within co-presence. This redefinition opens performance to process of ecological attunement and shared material vulnerability. Changing territory site-specific ecological method. 1. The notion of territory now exceeds geographical and political definitions and includes sensory, affective, and ecological dimensions. In this expanded field, site-specific performance becomes methodological and epistemological, practice in which place is not a backdrop, but an active co-creator of the performance. Site-specific performance emerges from material agency, humidity, acoustic, temperature, vegetable growth, infrastructures, sedimented stories, and hydrological flows. These elements are not contextual details, but active dramaturgical operators that shape perception, movement, and speech. The site is therefore not external to the work, but constitutive of it. This perspective resonates with the post-humanist approaches, Araway, Braitotti, which decenter the human as sole agent of meaning-making. It also aligns with A Street Neymanis, for whom bodies are environments and hydrological entanglement. This notion of bodies of water reframes corporality as porous and relational, extending site-specific performance towards a transcorporal ecology in which territories and bodies are co-composed one another. From this perspective, a forest, a riverbank, an urban ruin, or a coastal infrastructure like we saw here in Rabat is not simply selected as a location for performance, but acts as an operative system of forces that modulates rhythm, attention, and effect. Site specificity becomes a practice of ecological listening rather than spatial placement. Writing and staging, in this context, become acts of ecological attunement. The stage is no longer a neutral container, but a porous interface of negotiation between human and non-human agencies. It behaves less like a frame and more like a shifting membrane. Connections, either feminist bodies, memories, and environment. Connections refers to embodied relations between bodies, memory, and environment, understood as co-constitutive. Bodies are not autonomous entities, but processes formed through interaction with surrounding material and effective worlds. Following Neymanis, water functions as a medium of relation that circulates across bodies, all of us, infrastructures and landscapes, dissolving the boundary between interiority and exteriority. In this sense, hydration is not only biological, but epistemological. It shapes how memory, perception, and relation are formed. Memory is therefore not stored, but circulated, carried in moisture, breath, soil, and atmospheric conditions. It is distributed across material systems that exceed individual embodiment. A performance taking place in a humid coastal air, for example, like the one I saw yesterday in the theater, with a lot of sweat, is already shaped by invisible hydrological stories of evaporation, contamination, and flow. Site-specific performance intensifies this dynamic by making environmental conditions dramaturgical forces. A performance in a river Banzan, a forest, a coastal zone, is not situated in the site, it is co-produced by it. The wind, the temperature variation, the sedimentations are both all become co-authors of the event. Writing becomes an embodied practice, emerging through listening to the flows, the rhythms, the atmospheric variation. It is a mode of attention rather than representation. It involves slowing perception to register micro-transformations, the light, the humidity, the sound, the movement. Then listen becomes hydrological, an attunement to circulation, seepage and temporal, layering where more than human agencies actively participates in meaning making. In the sense, writing is less about inscription than about exposure. Transformations in sight as a co-performative field. Transformations refers to the ways in which performative processes reconfigure bodies, material, and perception. In site-specific performance, transformation is not symbolic, but materially enacted through environmental interaction. The site actively transforms the performance, just as performance transforms the site. Wind affects the voice, light reshapes the visibility, terrain also alters the movement. Humidity conditions breath and endurance. These are not external constraints, but dramaturgical forces that generate form. Within a hydrofeminist framework, transformation is also understood as circulation of matter. Bodies are processes of hybridization and exchange rather than fixed identities. Sweat, breath, and skin function as thresholds where environmental and corporal processes interpenetrate. This resonates with Jean Bennett's notion of distributed agency, extended through Neymani's emphasis on water relationality. Agency is not only distributed, but circulated. It moves through porous systems, like our skin, rather than residing in discrete subjects. Transformation also affects the temporal structure of performance. Rather than unfolding according to predetermined composition, performance becomes responsive, adapted, and continuously renegotiated in relation to the environment feedback. Au revoir. Writing no longer precedes staging. It emerged through situated experimentation where scores, gestures, and texts are tested against environmental forces. The stage becomes like the skin membrane between intention and ecological response, where failure, interruption, and drift are not disruptions, but constitutive elements of composition. 4. Transmission. Hydrological memory and situated communities. Transmission is an ecological process of circulation, reactivation, and shared presence, inseparable from site-specific conditions. Memory is not preserved in archives alone, but sedimented in landscapes, infrastructures, and hydrological systems. Water carries histories of extraction, contamination, migration, and transformation. In Neymani's framework, bodies of water are living archives of more than human memory, where geological and political histories intersect. Site-specific performance activates this layer. Memories by engaging their sensory and affective dimension. It does not represent water or place. It participates in their ongoing processes. A performance near a river, for instance, may activate not only its visible flow, but also its submerged histories of industrial use and ecological degradation. Transmission becomes a practice of co-attunement across human and non-human temporalities, geological, climatic, vegetal, infrastructural, and bodily rhythms intersect within performance. This produces a layered temporality in which past and present are continuous entangled. Community is not a fixed identity, but a temporary ecological formation, emerging through shared exposure to site conditions. Spectators and performers became co-inhabitants of a situated event, bound together by atmospheric and material co-presence, rather than shared identity or narrative. This resonates with André Lepic's notion of unstable communities, extended here towards hydrological collectivity formed through shared exposure. Such communities are ephemeral, emerging and dissolving in the conditions that produce them. Rethinking representation, reenacting, and relation with sight. Representation can no longer be understood as making absent things that are gone present. Contemporary performance increasingly challenges this logic through immediacy, participation, and co-presence. If the concept is retained, it must be redefined. Drawing on Rebecca Schneider, reenactment offers a more adequate framework. Performance becomes a process of reactivating in which memory, body, and presence are continuously reconstructed through individual experience. Reenactment is not repetition, but situated sensory reconstruction, where each participant generates meaning from embodied and relational memory. It is a process of differential return, where what returns is always altered by the conditions of its emergence. In this sense, performance becomes a space of co-construction of meaning. Meaning does not pre-exist in an event, it emerged through the encounter. Memory becomes dynamic, continuously reshaped by present experience and environmental conditions. In site-specific performance, this shift is decisive. Representation gives way to relational enactment. The site is no longer depicted but activated as process. Perform and site become mutually constitutive systems of emergence. Representation thus shifts from mimesis to material correspondence, and ecological emergence sites themselves participate in the reenactment as active agency of memory and transformation, rather than passive stage for human action. Within this expanded framework, writing is not external to staging, but part of the same ecological circuit. It becomes a mode of transmitting and transforming situated experience within a shared field of co-emergency between body, memory, environment, and territory. And I ask now for a video, and my students for last year. This reflection has outlined the transformation in the relations between writing and staging, in contemporary performative practices, in response to ecological, social, and sensory shifts. Artistic practices move away from hierarchical representational models towards ecological and situated modes of creation, considering that memory is associated to a personal experience, intrinsically connected to an individual experience. Writing becomes relational and emergent. Staging becomes ecological composition, attentive to interactions between bodies, materials, environments, and memories. Both are understood as processes rather than discrete phases of artistic production. Through connections, transformations, and transmissions, the stage emerges as a space of co-presence. To preach the vast subject of transmission, I quote Claire Bishop. Art is made to be seen by others, while education has no image. Within this framework, site-specific performance and hydrofeminist thought, particular Neymanist concept of bodies of water, reframe bodies as territory of porous, relational, and co-continuously co-constituted through flows of relation. Thank you. Just to finish, I go back one slide, just to finish, and to send all this to the moon. In 2025, I created Fenua, this piece last year, the last fragment. In Tuvaluan language, one island in the Pacific that is thread it's going to be the first nation to disappear because of climate change. Fenua means both land and belonging. Land is inherited communally, holding the ancestors' history and identity of its people. As the first nation facing disappearance due to climate change, Tuvalu embodies resilience in the face of erasure. This 5 millimeters microsculpture that you see here encapsulated soil from Tuvalu in a golden box that I designed and made it myself in gold, and is part of the first museum installed in the moon by the Moon Gallery Foundation and Life Inc., a company that preserves DNA and soil and seeds to be sent to the moon and preserved forever. Ultimately, contemporary performative practices do not merely represent the world. They participate in its ongoing transformation, producing situated ecologies of memory, attention, and relation that remain open, unstable, and continuously becoming. Thank you very much.